Thank you for joining me today for my second State of the City address. I want to thank the newly formed Mayor's Youth Advisory Council for kicking off this address with the Pledge of Allegiance. This group of young adults from all high schools across the city are going to join me throughout the coming year in bringing the collaborative exchange of the ideas of our youth to issues facing the city. Like everything in the last 12 months, this address is different. Last year, I delivered these remarks in a room full of people at the recently reopened and remodeled Pueblo Convention Center. That's not possible this year. This year, I come to you today via Facebook, live stream, and Channel 17. In a few short months, it will be 100 years since the flood that destroyed downtown Pueblo. Obviously, we don't celebrate the flood, but we do, 100 years later, celebrate and marvel at the resiliency of our ancestors who survived it and who built Pueblo back better. Striking is that the lives lost to COVID-19 in Pueblo County this year exceeds the number of lives lost to the Great Flood in June of 1921. The suffering and loss of COVID-19 has affected us all. But Pueblo families who lost a loved one to the pandemic are suffering immeasurable grief. On behalf of all Puebloans, we share our heartfelt condolences for your loss. As we reflect on the state of the city in 2021 and what we have been through in 2020, is it too audacious to wonder how, 100 years from now, the citizens of Pueblo will look back at what we did to survive the pandemic and what we did to move Pueblo forward? History may gravitate towards telling a salacious story about those that believed in conspiracies or complained about the health measures, but history must also tell a story that more Puebloans came together as a united city to sacrifice, to save lives, and protect livelihoods. As we reflect on the state of the city, we should remember that we control our destinies and that Pueblo has always been in it for the long haul. Instead of being a year of economic development that I spoke about last year, 2020 was a year of economic survival. It has been a year where lives and livelihoods have been at the forefront of our daily work life like never before in our lifetimes. 2020 was a year of challenge, controversy, resiliency, and incredible acts of kindness throughout Pueblo. 2021 will be a time for recovery and rebuilding. The pandemic affected every department in the city of Pueblo, just as it has affected all of you. 2020 was originally to be a grand celebration of the 150th anniversary of the founding of the city of Pueblo. Plans for a 150th birthday celebration last year were quelled by the pandemic. The inaugural Pueblo Classic Criterium bicycle race was canceled the night before it was to take place in March. In May, despite having the highest electric rates on the Front Range, the voters in Pueblo, in a special municipal election, overwhelmingly decided not to terminate the franchise agreement with Black Hills Energy. In June, the annual Street Rodders visit to the city of Pueblo and all of our festivities for the 4th of July were canceled. The Colorado State Fair was held virtually, and the Chilean Frijoles Festival was held, but on a much smaller scale. Yes, 2020 was a notable year in the city of Pueblo. And as if that wasn't enough, in May, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, George Floyd was unjustifiably killed by police officers, and the entire nation erupted in protest. Pueblo did not escape the protests, but unlike the protests in other cities in Colorado and across the country, the protests in Pueblo were peaceful and without the destruction of property. The frustration over racial injustice spilled onto Abriendo Avenue last year, with renewed calls for the removal of the Columbus Memorial. For more than 20 weeks, a Sunday protest took place at the site of the monument. All of the protests were peaceful. Attempts by the city to mediate a settlement between the opposing parties has to date been unsuccessful. I remain hopeful that we can find a Pueblo solution to this problem because it is not going away. Today, as we continue to vaccinate the most vulnerable in our community, I have a renewed sense of optimism that we will beat the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my highest priority for 2021. As a city and together, we have new confidence arising from the teamwork and accomplishment of the past year. We see the promise and potential that in working together, we will be stronger after COVID-19. I want to address 4 key areas today: Pueblo's economic vibrancy, our community, including social equity and community needs, housing, and Pueblo's infrastructure. 2020 was devastating to our small businesses, most particularly indoor dining and bars. Scientists told us that sitting in an indoor enclosed space with strangers unmasked for a prolonged period was risky and dangerous. Closed for months in 2020, and when opened with limits on capacity, restaurants struggled to survive in 2020, and that struggle continues today and will continue until this pandemic is controlled. Early in the pandemic, before there were any federal CARES funds, the City of Pueblo made available to small businesses in the City of Pueblo $5 million from our half-cent Economic Development Fund. Within 60 days, $3.4 million in grants and loans were made to 415 small businesses to help them survive the stay-at-home order and to reopen their businesses. When the city received $6.5 million in CARES funds, $3.8 million of that was made available to small businesses, including nearly $400,000 for Pueblo's outdoor patio program. That provided outdoor dining equipment for restaurants to help them increase their capacity. This included purchasing and installing parklets, tables, chairs, lights, and heaters. Not only will this investment in outside amenities help these businesses survive the pandemic, but it will also create a new culture in Pueblo of outside dining in certain neighborhoods that will outlive the pandemic. In total, more than 619 small businesses received assistance from these initiatives. Bars and restaurants are some of the biggest generators of sales tax for the City of Pueblo. So investing in these businesses was not only the right thing to do, but it also benefited the city economically. When the virus spiked uncontrollably and inside dining was closed or restricted, there was no benefit to the city. Like so many things this past year, taking measures to protect lives and the capacity of our medical systems became political. Economic survival was also a concern for many individuals whose lives were disrupted by the pandemic. The City of Pueblo spent more than $800,000 on rent, mortgage, utility assistance, and hunger relief for individuals and families. The Pueblo Food Project, which is a cooperative venture between the city and the county that began in 2019, played a vital role in securing food from local producers and distributing it to those in need. Over $400,000 in coronavirus relief fund dollars supported community relief programs for our community, including care packages for the homeless. The great majority of these funds were spent on locally sourced products. Just yesterday, we were informed that the Pueblo Food Project had been awarded a $175,000 grant by the state of Colorado for its food distribution program. And today's Pueblo chieftain carried a nice story about the food project's latest venture. Despite the pandemic and the economic devastation it created, the sales tax revenues for the City of Pueblo remained stable. This unexpected result is probably attributable to the federal CARES dollars sent to individuals and the investment by the city of the half-cent sales tax fund in small business. In 2019, Pueblo funded the street repair utility enterprise, and in 2020, we finally began rebuilding and repairing streets. We rebuilt Fortino Boulevard and Outlook Boulevard. We milled and overlaid Eagle Ridge Boulevard and Greenwood Street. The condition of our streets has historically been the #1 concern of our Pueblo citizens. I expect repairs to start much earlier in 2021, and we intend to rebuild portions of East Northern Avenue and mill and overlay 8 additional streets around town. Funding for transportation infrastructure continues to be a concern throughout the state. In Colorado, the state and its voters have failed to arrive at a plan to adequately fund our statewide transportation system. It is becoming increasingly clear that transportation projects in Pueblo will not receive adequate funding from the state, and if we want to complete some projects, such as the modernization of I-25 through Pueblo, we are going to have to find a way to raise and invest some local funds. This year, I intend to work with the City Council to prepare a ballot issue, which will ask the voters to enact a sales tax to fund transportation infrastructure and street repairs on a more equitable basis than the current street repair utility enterprise. Right now, assessing a fee on water meters does not equitably fund the street repairs like a sales tax would do. It makes no sense that only the people who use water in Pueblo pay for our streets. A much more equitable way of funding would be a voter-approved sales tax that would be paid by everyone who uses the streets in the city of Pueblo. I want to thank our City Council, our County Commissioners, the Director of Public Health, our Sheriff, our hospital administrators, and all of the first responders and hospital employees for their partnerships throughout the year to protect our citizens and respond to COVID-19. The city worked closely with Pueblo County on several projects, and that cooperation will continue in the future. I mentioned earlier the Pueblo Food Project. The Pueblo Means Business Project is also of significance in making development in Pueblo County easier. In this pandemic year, probably no partnership with the county has proven more successful than the one involving the Pueblo County Department of Public Health and Environment. The Health Department has led the community's response to the pandemic, and every day they have confronted new, unanswered questions. The city and county have engaged in weekly meetings with the Health Department, law enforcement, and the hospitals to help the community navigate this pandemic. As we move into 2021, the Health Department, in partnership with the Emergency Operations Center and our local first responders, will lead our vaccination efforts. Vaccinations against COVID-19 are the key to safety for our families and our community, and are the path to reopening our businesses and our economy. Early in the pandemic, the Business Economic Recovery Team was established to help businesses navigate the pandemic. This team has become the nucleus of the 5-star program that will allow our businesses to operate at a higher level. This 5-star program represents a partnership among entities too numerous to mention that will recognize businesses that go above and beyond to protect their employees and patrons during this pandemic. Our Code Enforcement Department has played a vital role in not only keeping our city clean, but also in responding to the pandemic. The slide that you should see indicates that there was increased enforcement activity in 2020 from our Code Enforcement Department, and those efforts will continue into 2021. In addition to dealing with that issue of the appearance of our city, our Code Department in 2021 will play a vital role in the 5-star program. In August, 10 additional COVID-19 education and compliance technicians were hired to help educate businesses on COVID-19 and to make sure that they were complying with the rules and regulations. These individuals will be responsible for certifying our five-star businesses countywide and making sure that they follow the rules. As strange as it might sound, our wastewater department is playing a vital role in our response to this pandemic. For months, we have been monitoring the DNA of COVID-19 in our sewer water. We take samples twice a week, and we test that for increased DNA of COVID-19. I don't know if they've got the chart up, but you can see when a spike has occurred in our wastewater treatment plant. A few 5 to 7 days later, we notice an increase in COVID-19 cases in Pueblo. We have recently established an early warning system to advise neighborhoods when there is increased risk of the virus in their area so that they can be tested. The city continues to work on streamlining its licensing and permitting processes and will shortly unveil an online system that will make it much easier and convenient for citizens to obtain permits and forms necessary for development. We are working with Pueblo County to make that system usable countywide. 2020 brought the formal announcement from Everaz that they are going to construct the new long rail mill that had been long talked about, and significant work is now being done. When complete, that project will guarantee good jobs in Pueblo for years to come. Our economic development partner, PEDCO, took the lead in developing One Pueblo, an economic development strategy that encompasses the city, Pueblo County, K-12 education, higher education, and business and industry. That strategic plan will soon be released. We need more housing in Pueblo, housing of all types, market rate housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing. There are several exciting projects being discussed, and I expect that in 2021, some of those projects will go forward. One of the projects includes creating affordable housing in the Holmes Hardware Building, an iconic building in our Union Avenue district that has been vacant for decades. Another includes affordable housing in the city-owned Pope Block Building. There are also market rate housing projects that are being considered by developers. I am hopeful that these projects will see significant progress in 2021. And although we have taken steps in the city to make it easier to use some of our vacant buildings in the downtown and Union Avenue areas, we've not seen developers step up and begin that development at this point. I want to challenge our city council, the county, realtors, and even developers to join me and kick off a decade of growth that starts by investing into Pueblo's downtown once more. On a more long-term nature, we're in the process of planning for additional fire stations in the city of Pueblo, some to replace outdated stations and some to provide services to growing areas of Pueblo. We have an internal group working on locations, design, and financing, and we expect in the next 2 to 3 years we will be replacing some of our dated, non-compliant stations. We are so fortunate to live in a community where our diversity is enjoyed and celebrated in our everyday lives. The city has been selected to participate in 3 key grants in 2020 that will continue into 2021. Bloomberg Philanthropies selected Pueblo to participate in a social and financial equity 18-month program to work with technical advisors and cohort cities around the country on improving the city's social and financial equity within the city's general fund budget. The city was awarded 2 grants from the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, the Financial Navigators Program in partnership with NeighborWorks of Pueblo, and the City Start Program, where we will work with local focus groups and program technical advisors on a financial empowerment blueprint for our city. We're planning once again this year for the Pueblo Classic Criterium Cycling event in Pueblo on April 24th and 25th. This is the event that was canceled the day before it was scheduled to take place last year. This 2-day event is sanctioned by the Rocky Mountain Collegiate Cycling Conference. And in addition to college riders, there will be professional racing, and we are planning a community ride on Sunday, April 25th at noon on the Criterium course on Union Avenue. We are hopeful that COVID-19 will be under better control and that we'll be able to have activities that include the public. We have just opened an art contest to design a poster for that event and have announced a $1,000 prize to the winning artist. Details of this contest can be obtained from Pueblo Arts Alliance. As we move into 2021, our primary goal is to increase the economic activity in Pueblo and continue to recruit new businesses and employers. We must continue our work to make it easier to do business in Pueblo. One of the things that we learned from this pandemic is that many jobs and businesses can be done remotely. That discovery presents opportunities for Pueblo. As people determine to find less populated places to live, places with outstanding outdoor recreational activities like Pueblo, we should redouble our efforts to make Pueblo a place where they will want to live, work, and play. We can make Pueblo more attractive by increasing our housing supply and creating housing that is attractive to individuals who can live anywhere they want and bring their jobs with them. We need to position Pueblo to take advantage of these opportunities. These won't be large job announcements, but they will steadily increase our population with educated people and good careers. The written State of the City report will be released today and will be available on the city's website. This document contains reports from all the city departments and compares their 2020 activities with those of previous years. Let me conclude by saying that I'm honored to serve as the mayor of Pueblo during these unprecedented times, and I'm looking forward to our continued recovery and growth. While at times during the past year, our challenges seemed insurmountable, we worked collaboratively as a community to meet this pandemic together, to plan for the challenges we faced, and to creatively and passionately develop a pathway for a bright future. And while I can't think of a better time to be mayor, I'm hopeful that our days of mask wearing and social distancing will soon come to an end and that we will once again be able to gather together. Finally, I want to thank all of the dedicated employees of the City of Pueblo who have worked hard this year to continue to deliver services to our citizens. And I want to thank and acknowledge the leadership team of the city who met with me daily during the early days of this pandemic and regularly thereafter to ensure that the City of Pueblo could continue to deliver high-quality services to its citizens under these most unusual circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, not only does Pueblo have a proud history, it has a bright future. Thank you.